Alright guys, happy Monday. What's going on? If you guys please have your devices out closed. Have your notebooks out closed as well. Alright, I'm going to start taking a look for attendance, but while I'm doing that, here is today's grammar bell ringer. Alright, so this is the continuation of what we were talking about last week in terms of parts of speech. Right, and this is how we're going to go about grammar bell ringers and grammar throughout the semester. Right. So what we said last week was that, essentially we're looking at parts of speech. What that means is that when you have a sentence, every word in that sentence is doing a job towards the goal of communicating a complete thought. All right? There are 8 parts of speech. It's not, in my opinion, worth it just kind of like get them all at once, like drinking out of a fire hose. All right, Lord, just a little bit. All right, so we're going to start off with nouns. So a noun is a word. It's a word that stands for a person, place, thing, or idea. All right? As we stand right now, I'm thinking Quiz Friday. If you were to check the Infinite Campus, it would say Quiz Friday, all right? Look, we're not tied to that necessarily. I am still very much in a play it by ear type of situation. And then just putting more thought into it, honestly, guys, we have the Animal Farm unit going on, which should take precedent. So, just know that I'm just kind of thinking different ideas in terms of how to give you feedback on this part of speech stuff, all right? So look, with that being said, I would definitely want to continue with nouns, and what you're going to see here is a little bit of a different approach than the first couple days, all right? And again, I'm just playing around with different ways to kind of like assess where you're at and to see where you are in terms of identifying nouns. So you have 10 questions, all right, front and back. Okay, and then the way it's going to work is that each sentence has more than one noun. Your choice of 4 is going to be lists of words. The correct choice will have only nouns. So read the sentence, look for nouns, read the 4 choices, and then eliminate choices that don't have nouns in them. As soon as you see a choice doesn't have a noun in it, you should eliminate it. All right, you put a timer up. So if you had a choice of 4, you can go through each word and say, is this word person, place, thing, or idea? You're constantly looking for person, place, thing, or idea. Also, my bad, number 1 there's a typo. Number 1, 2 of the choices are correct. I think it's A and D. It's my fault on that. So if number 1's kind of dragging you down a little bit, just move on past it. There's a typo. It's either A or D.
No more to say. The importance of keeping the pigs in good health was all too obvious. So it was agreed without further argument that the milk and the windfall apples, and also the main crop of apples when they ripe.
Not quite sure what happened there. All right, about 3.5 minutes. But I'm also walking around. If I see you guys are kind of wrapped up, we could always flip the script a little bit. last weekend. I saw we had a dominating win. It's 100% on Friday. It's always good. It's good. Are we home again this Friday by chance? I imagine conference play is going to start soon. About 2.5 more minutes if you need it. Looks like a good amount of you are wrapped up. I was checking out some like haunted houses. Apparently there's a pretty good one. Like an hour away. The only thing is my daughter's 6. It's quite depressing, you know. I don't want to overdo it. Pause it. We're supposed to wait until 15 after. 30? Oh, so it would be 10. Yeah. Alright, looks good. Looks like everyone's done. Let's take a look here, and again, my apologies. First one, I think I was just trying to kind of like add to it, and then I made a mistake. And so, if you look at number 1, all right, you'll see that both A and D are correct because both A and D are only nouns. So, look, with that being said, guys, what you're basically looking at is that for each choice, there's a word or two making it incorrect. So essentially for each choice, you have a word that's not a noun. Alright, so for instance, for letter B, right, for letter B, you have two words that aren't nouns. Right? You have before, which is not a noun, and began, which is not a noun. Right? If you look at letter C, can anyone identify, oh, you already back there? Can anyone identify what word in C would not be a noun? Mom. What word in C is not? Great. Placed is a verb. The ed at the end is the hint that would tell you it's a verb. Ed is going to indicate like past tense. All right, let's move along. Number 2. All right, your correct answer. You should be checking your work here. Your correct answer should be letter B. All right, so if you were to look at letter A, went is not a noun. So went would make A incorrect. That also makes C incorrect. And if you look at letter D, after is not a noun, right? After is not a person, place, thing, or idea. And as we go through the year, we'll learn which part of speech after is. It's one of those words that, depends on how you use it, but it's likely an adverb. All right, number 3. Letter C is correct. Computer, phone, and meeting are all nouns. If you were to look at letter A, rang would make A incorrect. If we were to look at letter B, during would make B incorrect. Right? If you look at letter D, again you have during would make it incorrect. All right. Moving quite along, number 4. All right, number 4, B is correct. In number 4, shared and A makes it incorrect. With is not a noun, so that eliminates C and D. All right, number 5. Number 5, D is your correct choice. All right, and A, damaged is a verb, so damage makes A incorrect. In B, you have damaged again. In C, the word in is not a noun. All right, number 6, got a chili pepper. All right, so I think number 6 was the hardest one. If you got number 6 correct, it's a good job. Okay, relative to the other ones for sure. So it's B. All right, dog, ball, field, schools, all nouns. All right, if you look at letter A, dog, ball, school, chase. Chased is a verb, A is incorrect. All right, if you look at C, across. That can be a difficult one. All right, when you start seeing things like direction though, those are not nouns, so across is what makes C incorrect. All right, and then D, after is what makes letter D incorrect. All right, let's wrap this up. 7 is A. Canceled is not a noun. Because is not a noun. Were is not a noun. 8 is B. All right, read is not a noun. After is not a noun. Number 9 is B. All right, prescribed and A is not a noun. With and C is not a noun. For and D is not a noun. And then 10, you have letter D. All right, by is not a noun. To is not a noun. Travel is not a noun. All right, so look, again, remember, I want to see where you are before we move forward. All right, we're not necessarily tied to any particular date in terms of assessment, so it's really going to be more of a figuring it out in terms of how to give you an opportunity to show that you know this. So look, with that being said, if you want to keep this, keep it, but I would just kind of like to see where you guys are. So you don't need to put your name on it because I'm looking for more of an overall sense. All right, but if you guys can pass this up, and then I've got another one as well. All right, we need to get creative in passing it up. Get creative in passing it up. All right, and then once you've passed it up, it looks like most of you are already ready, but you can start opening your device. All right, so once you are done passing it up, appreciate whoever did this. Thank you. All right, you can go ahead and open your device, please. Perfect. All right. So remember, today is your student work day. All right. So class ends a little earlier today, and you will then go down to the cafeteria for student work day. All right. And so we are going to start chapter 4 today. We're going to get as much of chapter 4 done together as possible in terms of like taking notes together. All right, but your time downstairs should be spent finishing reading and annotating chapter 4. All right, tomorrow no school. We'll look at chapters 1 through 4 on Wednesday. The way Wednesday's class is going to look, guys, is I am going to walk you through my chapter 4 notes. So the plan for Wednesday is for you to see my chapter 4 notes right before the quiz. But you definitely want to have your own chapter 4 notes by then as well. All right, and then guys, bless you, ultimately, please know that the way I made the quiz was I looked at my own notes and I basically made the questions like as I was looking at my notes. The purpose of that is to reward students who have been taking great notes. So if you're in a situation right now and maybe your chapter 1's not great or your chapter 2's not great, there's time to fix that. You can work together with a classmate downstairs during student work time. You can email me if there's a particular chapter you want to go over, right? So today is the 5th day of an 11-day unit. Remember, our term ends on the 3rd, Friday the 3rd. We don't have school Thursday the 2nd. So as far as I'm looking at it, guys, our term, as far as like new work goes, our term is going to wrap up on 10/1. That's Tuesday or Wednesday, excuse me. That allows me, like, if you're absent that day, to give you a day to make up anything. And then what I'm thinking is on Friday the 3rd, maybe like an extra credit type work day, maybe fan art, something like that. I see Ms. Garner has been like asking her students to do like fan art stuff. All right, so please have ready right now your computer open. All right, have Animal Farm open to the bottom of page 19 of the PDF. So chapter 4. All right, have your notebook open. And make sure that your notes for today are labeled chapter 4. All right, here are some extra credit opportunities. So for these opportunities, feel free to look at your chapter 3 notes. All right, for these opportunities, feel free to look at chapter 3 in the PDF, which will be prior to page 19. Your notes are probably the better way to do this. All right, so what do the animals work together to accomplish faster than ever? Scott.
Harvesting the hay.
Yeah, great job. All right, the harvest. And so so I could have done a better job of wording that question. How do the animals work together to accomplish the harvest faster than ever? I would say there's 2 different correct ways to answer that. Nolan, your hand up? Oh. Anybody want to take a shot at that? So then, how were they able to get this harvest done 2 days earlier than usual? Listen, great. So the fact that the animals are really buying into this, they're motivated. And their motivation is causing them to like work better. They're having fun. They're not being like, they're not feeling that their work isn't going towards them. Yeah. That's a great answer. So there's 3 different correct answers. That's a great answer. The horse, Boxer, was working overtime. Boxer was doing more work than anyone could imagine. And that alone was going a long way towards like this harvest is the best one ever. All right, I think the first answer is great as well. And then if there were a third answer, like they learned how to use the tools, specifically the pigs. All right, which animals learn to read and write, and more importantly, why? Yes. Yeah, the pigs. Why do you think? Why did they, like on Sundays, they would read the blacksmithing books, and like on Sundays, they would do extra reading? Why? What was in it for them?
Because they want to know a little more
Than the others. Yeah. And so when this is all said and done, this book, it is really more of like why this type of system doesn't work. But ultimately, the pigs want to be in power. And what they know, being the smart ones, is that the best way to get that is by being educated. Right? The fastest way to like get in power and staying in power is to know things. All right? And then our last little chapter 3, catch me up. Right? The 7 commandments were supposed to be so important, but the less intelligent animals, quoting the author, just couldn't remember them. So they simplify it to this maxim of like 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. All right, and so essentially, guys, why? Why make the 7 commandments into this easier to handle, easier to remember slogan maxim? This is a tough one. Anyone want to take a shot at this? That's a great response, right? And that was when Snowball basically like demonstrated that he could use his words to convince. Guys, look. Slogans are easy to remember. They want all the animals to remember this basic message. The message is one of unity. All right? If some people can't remember it, well, now it doesn't unify. If the school had a dress code, it would make students uniform. They'd be uni-informed. They'd be one in form. But then if one person started wearing the uniform a little bit different, well then the effect of the uniform is not going to work, right? Because we want to unify, not separate. So making the commandments easier to remember serves that purpose. All right, and then a couple of other things, right? So, look, ultimately, chapter 3, you're starting to see like the early days of socialism. And what you're seeing is that when socialism first starts, all the animals are like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then the bad things show up. All right, and so these notes are not anything that you need to have copied. It's more just me kind of like looking at this as a unit of allegory. And I definitely fell into the rabbit hole, if you will, of the Bolsheviks. So essentially the Bolsheviks were this ruling class in the part of the world that we would now consider Russia. All right? The Bolsheviks led a revolution in Russia around 1917. And it was a revolution in which the labor got together and unified to revolt against the government at that time. This led to the formation of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is the USSR. All right? The Soviet Union no longer exists. All right? And we're going to learn more about it as the unit goes on. Right? But Russia is one of the countries that were a part of the USSR. All right, and so furthermore, chapter 3, kind of like we spoke about, it's the initial enthusiasm, the initial unity, but on the negative side, it's just not quite working in terms of being equal. All right, so you okay? You want some water? You good? I think we're all set here. All right, so look, sneak peek at chapter 4. Okay, before we start reading chapter 4, let's take a little quick look at what is going to happen in that chapter. We learned that animalism is spreading further than ever. Animalism started off on just an initial farm. That's credit. Anybody remember the original name of the farm? Scott?
It was like a
Manor Farm, good job. Right, so the revolution started at Manor Farm got renamed Animal Farm, but now all these other farm animals are learning about the revolution. How? Snowball. Snowball is training pigeons, and these pigeons are going to other farms, and they're spreading the word of the revolution. They're spreading the lyrics to the song. So imagine you're an animal in one of these other farms and you hear about the revolution. How would you feel? How would you feel if you were an animal and you heard about the revolution? Yeah, why? Why would you feel good? Ross? What would it mean to you if you were an animal on the farm and you're being whipped by their Jones, you're being held like Jones was holding the animals on animal farms. Now you hear about these animals who freed themselves and have a revolution, you feel good. Why?
Because maybe they're not getting whipped.
Yeah, and look, we could do it too. If those animals can do it, we can do it. And if you're an owner of one of these other farms, that's a dangerous thing to get out there, right? So we learn of 2 other farm owners. And these are farm owners on opposite sides of Animal Farm. So if you had 3 farms in a row, Animal Farm would be the middle one. As you're taking notes, I would pay attention to the name of those 2 farms. That could be a quiz question. As you're taking notes, I'd pay attention to the owners of those farms. That could be a quiz question. All right? Jones tries to retake the farm, and Snowball emerges as a war hero. All right, let's make sure our PDFs are open to page 19, chapter 4. And let's go.
Should be reserved for the pigs alone.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. By the late summer, the news of what had happened on Animal Farm had spread across half the county. Every day, Snowball and Napoleon sent out flights of pigeons, whose instructions were to mingle with the animals on neighboring farms, tell them the story of the rebellion, and teach them the tune of Beasts of England. Most of this time, Mr. Jones had spent sitting in the tap room of the Red Lion at Willingdon, complaining to anyone who would listen of the monstrous injustice he had suffered in being turned out of his property by a pack of good-for-nothing animals. The other farmers sympathized in principle, but they did not at first give him much help. At heart, each of them was secretly wondering whether he could not somehow turn Jones's misfortune to his own advantage. It was lucky that the owners of the two farms which adjoined Animal Farm were on permanently bad terms. One of them, which was named Foxwood, was a large, neglected, old-fashioned farm, much overgrown by woodland, with all its pastures worn out and its hedges in a disgraceful condition. Its owner, Mr. Pilkington, was an easygoing gentleman farmer who spent most of his time in fishing or hunting according to the season. The other farm, which was called Pinchfield, was smaller and better kept. Its owner was a Mr. Frederick, a tough, shrewd man, perpetually involved in lawsuits and with a name for driving hard bargains. These two disliked each other so much that it was difficult for them to come to any agreement, even in defense of their own interests.
Alright, so let's just make sure we're all on the same page here notes-wise. So I've gone ahead and given my chapter 4 notes like my own title. Like if you'll notice, the chapters in this novel aren't titled. So I'm kind of just titling it myself. I'm calling chapter 4 Jones's Revenge. And you're seeing now what the early scene is. It's Jones. It's Jones, he's hanging out with these other farmers. And as the way it's being presented right now, these other farmers are going to be important for this chapter. Alright, so the news of what happened on Animal Farm has spread half across the country. The council, excuse me. Alright, Napoleon and Snowball, they sent out pigeons whose instructions were to mingle with the animals on neighboring farms. Hey, look, just real quick. Every so often on my notes, I will copy and paste from the PDF. Is neighboring misspelled right there? So we, in America, we're the only English-speaking country that actually gets rid of the U. Right? If you were looking at a book written in America, the U wouldn't be there. Alright? But in fact, it is supposed to be there. Same thing with like the word color. Like we spell the word color with no U. It's supposed to have a U. Favor is supposed to have a U. Right? And it really just comes down to like in America, when you printed something, they were charged by the letter. So like just a thing that became standard in like early American journalism was eliminating letters wherever possible. Like the word donut, how do you think donut is spelled? It's like a G, an H, an O, a U. I promise you on that. Alright, so it's just one of those things. Alright, so tells the pigeons, go mingle with the other animals and tell them the story of the rebellion. Teach them beasts of England. Alright? The other farmers learn what happened to Mr. Jones. Instead of feeling sympathetic for him, the other farmers wonder how they can further take advantage of him. Alright, so look, guys, remember, we're like switching up how we do vocab. So we're not going to do like vocab quizzes and vocab lists anymore. And instead, what I'm going to do is just like highlight certain words that were used in the context of what we were reading. So instead of feeling sympathetic for Jones, the other farmers wonder how they can take advantage of it. What does it mean to be sympathetic? All right, Ross.
Feel sorry for him.
Great. Now look, say by chance did you just know that in advance, like you knew that already? Say you didn't. You could use the context clues to figure it out. So what I mean by that is like it says instead. So instead of feeling sympathetic, they're going to take advantage of it. The word instead tells you that it's the opposite of taking advantage of it, right? And so feel bad for them is great. So sympathetic is an adjective. The noun would be sympathy. Sympathy is the thing, all right? And so what you're seeing here is in this allegory, the farmers are capitalists. a part of capitalism is buy low, sell high. Post Great Depression, and maybe Great Depression is not the right term. Any social studies like knowers? But like, what was it when Wall Street crashed? So Wall Street is like the market, right? There's global markets. It's primarily housed in Lower Manhattan. But at one point, Wall Street crashed. And like people who owned stocks, those stocks became worthless, right? And so what ended up happening was the truly wealthy families, when all the stocks became worth nothing, they bought them all up. They were called penny stocks. The stocks were only worth a penny each. And these families took advantage of others' misfortune. Guys, you see this all the time in real estate. Like in the real estate world, there will be like a house that gets foreclosed on, or like the person could have paid the mortgage. The house gets auctioned off, and somebody who has the money buys the house cheap, fixes it, sells it, and makes a ton of money. They could have helped the person out to get their house back. That's not capitalism, right? And so you see these farmers, they're like, Jones is suffering? How do I make money off of that? So we find out about the two farms, okay? And you definitely want this in your notes, all right? We got about 12 minutes left. Let's try to get as much of this as possible, but definitely want this in your notes, okay? These are the two farms near Animal Farm. If I had to make a prediction, these farms will end up being important. These farm owners will end up being characters that matter. Okay, so you have Foxwood. This is the one that's kind of like not in good shape. It's owned by Picklington. He's the reason this farm's not in good shape. Right? He's kind of laid back. And then you have Pinchfield. And Pinchfield is owned by Mr. Frederick. Mr. Frederick is a tough, shrewd man, perpetually involved in lawsuits, and with a name for driving hard bargains. All right? Perpetually, that's going to be our second vocab word of the day. Does anyone have prior knowledge with perpetually and what that word means? Like if I do something perpetually, let me give you an example. We do our bell ringers perpetually. What's a word that could replace perpetually? Or more than one word? Consistently is a great answer. Right? Something that's perpetual, it's almost like think like a momentum. Like it is going to happen. It's perpetual. Right? And so, routine, consistently, those are great answers. This guy, Mr. Frederick, he is consistently suing other people. All right? And it characterizes him in a couple of different ways. Right? It characterizes him as somebody who's very money driven, and also somebody that's not really caring towards others. All right? So these two owners, they hate each other. All right? They hate each other so much that they can't agree on anything. And according to the novel, they can't even agree on things that serve their best interests. In my opinion, I think this particular part of the novel is allegorical to political systems where you only have two choices. America has more than two political parties, but there are two that dominate the game. And so what you kind of have is a nation where you only really have two political choices. And now here's the thing, those two different political choices, they would never agree with each other ever. Even on stuff that serves their best interest. So in other words, these two farmers symbolize the two different political parties. And there will be times where there's something both parties would want, both parties would need, but it's not going to happen. Because that means I got to work with this guy? Nope. And it's very, very interesting that the way that the author presents it is that there's boxwood, there's animal farm, right, and then there's pinch fields. It's like there's an aisle between them, all right? And if you ever look at the Senate, in the Senate, you have one party sits on one side, one party sits on the other side, and there's an aisle that separates them, right? And there is a figure of speech in politics, crossing the aisle, right? When you cross the aisle, you work with the other side because this road needs to be fixed, or we need better Wi-Fi, or whatever, right? Whatever it is that people need. So very interesting in that regard. It is 23. We're gonna listen to about 27. We'll see where we're at notes-wise, and then I'll cap us off. So we're not packing just yet.
They were both thoroughly frightened by the rebellion on Animal Farm, and very anxious to prevent their own animals from learning too much about it. At first they pretended to laugh to scorn the idea of animals managing a farm for themselves. The whole thing would be over in a fortnight, they said. They put it about that the animals on the Manor Farm, they insisted on calling it the Manor Farm, they would not tolerate the name Animal Farm, were perpetually fighting among themselves, and were also rapidly starving to death. When time passed and the animals had evidently not starved to death, Frederick and Pilkington changed their tune and began to talk of the terrible wickedness that now flourished on Animal Farm. It was given out that the animals there practiced cannibalism, tortured one another with red-hot horseshoes, and had their females in common. This was what came of rebelling against the laws of nature, Frederick and Pilkington said. However, these stories were never fully believed. Rumors of a wonderful farm where the human beings had been turned out and the animals managed their own affairs continued to circulate in vague and distorted forms, and throughout that year a wave of rebelliousness ran through the countryside. Bulls, which had always been tractable, suddenly turned savage. Sheep broke down hedges and devoured the clover. Cows kicked the pale over. Hunters refused their fences and shot their riders onto the other side. Above all, the tune and even the words of "Beasts of England" were known everywhere. It had spread with astonishing speed. The human beings could not contain their rage when they heard this song, though they pretended to think it merely ridiculous. They could not understand, they said, how even animals could bring themselves to sing such contemptible rubbish. Any animal caught singing it was given a flogging on the spot. And yet the song was irrepressible. The blackbirds whistled it in the hedges, the pigeons cooed it in the elms. It got into the din of the smithies and the tune of the church bells. And when the human beings listened to it, they secretly trembled, hearing in it a prophecy of their future doom.
All right, so let's just take a look at some notes here. All right, check your notes, and then add to your notes as much as you can. But both owners, so the two owners that we were talking about, those two different characters, right? They refused to call it Animal Farm. Guys, when we did our pre-read, right? Words give power. Words give power. So stuff like calling it this. Guys, in the history of power, has there ever been a person or a thing that wants to be called this and doesn't want to be called that? Does that click, right? No, don't call me that. Call me this. And now here come the opposition. And the opposition's like, I'm not calling you that. I'm calling you this. I'm calling you by your old name. I'm den naming you. You guys ever heard that? Den name something? Or like they're den naming a farm. Alright? And they're convinced the farm's gonna fail. Why? Why are they convinced the farm's gonna fail? Because of their opinion of the animals. They have no knowledge of what's going on the farm. In fact, guys, there's a bit of irony in that we know that they're doing well. So for these farmers to be like, they're gonna fail, they're gonna turn to cannibalism. That's strong. That is, you have a very low opinion. That you think they're gonna become cannibals, right? And what you see is disobedience. right? These other animals not on Animal Farm, they're starting to disobey, right? Kick things over, graffiti, vandalism. These are signs of oppression, right? These things exist because we, human nature, we want to fight back, right? I'm not going to stay hid. All right, so look, it is 27. All right, you're going to head down to student work time in about 2 minutes. You should finish reading chapter 4. You should finish annotating chapter 4. It might be a good idea to work with other classmates. Probably more so for the first 2 chapters, just making sure you've got everything that you need. All right, and then I hope you guys enjoy your day off. Just wait until 30, but I hope you guys enjoy your day off. Yeah, what's up, Lou? Finish reading chapter 4, finish annotating chapter 4. All right, then 5, 9, 11, 12, 13, 17. All right. All right, it's 29. We're just going to wait until the bell, or not the bell, you know what I mean. You know. You guys want to start gathering towards the front? Laura, thank you for giving my time keeper. I don't have my phone at the moment. Is it 30 yet? Just wait. Yeah. You all right?
Yeah.
Appreciate it.